The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
New York, Manhattan, March 6, 2023. A millionaire's dead body is found by the cops in his opulent mansion. An apparently innocent housewife from next door is involved in what starts out as a tragic accident and turns into a story of lies, treachery, and murder. Lisa Thompson, an apparently dedicated housewife, lives with her husband, Mark, and their 2 kids in the Upper West Side, a wealthy neighborhood. From the outside, their life seems to be quite lovely, but Lisa is filled with a deep emptiness, a want for attention and excitement that her everyday life is unable to provide. Successful attorney Mark is frequently preoccupied with his work, which makes Lisa feel alone and undervalued. Robert Caldwell, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for charm and a confident demeanor, lives across the street. Emily, his wife, is a successful executive whose work commitments require her to spend a lot of time away from home. Robert hides a profound sense of loneliness behind his opulent lifestyle and large property. Even though he is successful, he longs for a relationship and the family life that his marriage does not provide. Their encounter is sparked by a neighborhood get-together, a fancy summer party hosted by acquaintances they both attend. Robert is immediately drawn to Lisa when she walks into the yard wearing a dress that is both exquisite and modest. They couldn't deny it, but their first exchange is informal, full of pleasantries and courteous laughing. It radiated the fact that a flame was lit beneath the surface of their everyday discussion. Their paths intersect often over the next few weeks. Their clandestine attraction is fueled by brief touches and shared looks during neighborhood gatherings. Because of Lisa's grace and beauty, Robert can't stop thinking about her. In turn, Lisa is attracted to Robert's charm and the lavish care he gives her. Before long, their romance turns into a serious relationship. It starts with a covert meeting in posh cafes and quiet areas of city parks. Every moment they steal strengthens their relationship and stokes their passion. In Robert's presence, Lisa feels alive, and her ordinary existence becomes less significant. For Robert, Lisa is a symbol of the love and warmth he longs for. Their affair intensifies as the weeks stretch into months. They experience passionate moments and emotional times in opulent hotel rooms during the afternoons. As a demonstration of his growing love for Lisa, Robert buys her numerous pricey presents, such as exquisite jewelry and designer gowns. Lisa enjoys their covert romance's intensity and attentiveness. Robert becomes oblivious to the truth of their connection as his affections for Lisa deepen. He starts to believe that Lisa is the missing component of his life, the love he has been looking for. Sensing that Lisa might be the one to break his heart, he starts to feel as though he has made a mistake with his wife. To put it simply, he loved Lisa. Lisa is a skilled manipulator who presents herself as the ideal mate while deftly appealing to Robert's desires. To further win Robert over, she tells him about her bad marriage and portrays Mark as cold and heartless. Each encounter brings them closer to a precarious edge as their affair develops into a complicated mashup of passion and deceit. Captured by his emotions, Robert believes he has found true love in Lisa. He envisions a time when they can be together freely, free from the constraints of their present existence and without concealment. But Lisa is up to a different game. Regaining a sense of excitement and agency is more important to her than love. She relishes the thrill of the forbidden, the control she has over Robert, and, above all, the opulent presents he gives her. She sees the affair as a means of addressing the gap in her life without upsetting the security that her marriage to Mark offers. The stakes increase as their connection develops. The lies get more intricate and perilous, and their covert rendezvous become riskier. Although there is a risk of detection in every encounter, neither party can bring themselves to stop it. Robert continues to believe that their love is genuine and unadulterated, blissfully oblivious of Lisa's true character. Overwhelmed by his feelings, Robert begins making plans for his future with Lisa. He dreams about the day they can leave their marriages and begin a new life together, and he envisions a life in which they may be openly together. He suggests purchasing a home in a different city so they won't have to conceal. He even begins exploring possible areas to live and perusing real estate listings. He receives encouragement and support from Lisa, who is skilled at influencing others. Although she conceals her true motivations from him, she gives him the impression that she is equally delighted. This affair, which is based on deception and falsehoods, is on the verge of disintegrating. Robert is so enamored with Lisa that he doesn't notice how she manipulates him. Unaware that Lisa is only using him to get out of the limitations of her own life, he thinks he has found his soulmate. The romance lasts for 3 years, during which Lisa deftly upholds her facade as a devoted mother and wife. From the outside, Lisa seems to be the ideal housewife, running her home with efficiency and style. She supports Mark's profession, throws dinner parties, and goes to school functions while skillfully managing her covert life with Robert. Robert and Lisa meticulously arrange their covert meetings to appear like social gatherings or straightforward errands. They constantly look for methods to maintain their enthusiasm, meeting in upscale hotels and remote vacation homes. A comfortable lodge in the mountains is one of their favorite spots since it allows them to spend a few days away from the spotlight without fear of detection. They have a lot of sex and have lengthy chats during their intensive time together. Being adept at hiding her double life, Lisa ensures that neither her husband, Mark, nor their kids have any suspicions. Robert grows more and more reliant on Lisa, yearning for her love and companionship. He views her as his lifeblood, someone who infuses his otherwise lonely existence with energy and love. As his love for her deepens, he begins to see a time when they might be openly together without the constraints of their present existence. Constantly anticipating the future, Lisa exploits Robert's feelings. By promising that they will be together after they are free from their husbands, she convinces him to put her in his will. Lisa is a master of language, skillfully combining genuine devotion with deft manipulation. She depicts a happy and loving life that is very different from the truth of her marriage to Mark. While making sure she maintains control of the situation, she keeps Robert interested by giving him hope that they will be together in the future. Robert obeys without question since he is so enamored of Lisa. He changes his will to give her a sizable portion of his wealth and assets. He sees this gesture as a binding pledge of their shared existence and a tribute to their love. Lisa, however, sees it as a way to safeguard her future, a safety net that guarantees her comfort and self-reliance. Mark is unaware of Lisa's secret existence back home. He spends much of his time and energy on his difficult job, so suspicion is minimal. He has complete faith in Lisa since he thinks she is the devoted companion she seems to be. Mark feels secure since their marriage is normal and predictable, despite the lack of passion. Robert's wife, Emily, trusts her husband's faithfulness and spends much of her time away on business. Being a high-ranking executive necessitates extensive travel, and she frequently spends weeks away from home. Unaware of the affair that has been going on right in front of her, she thinks Robert is faithful and devoted. Because of Emily's frequent absences and Mark's attention to his job, Lisa and Robert's interactions are kept under wraps. Using the stability of their marriages as a cover, their affair flourishes right in front of everyone. But there's always a chance of being discovered. They nearly did once. Following one of their covert encounters, Robert had left a tiny gift, a bracelet that Lisa had admired, in her car. Lisa neglected to conceal it in her haste to get home. Later that night, Mark noticed and inquired about it. Lisa hastily conjured up a narrative about getting it as a treat for herself. Mark's skepticism made her heart race, but she was able to ignore it. Both of them were reminded of how quickly their secret may be revealed by the near miss. They carried on with their romance in spite of the alarm, always mindful of the danger that may be found anywhere. Robert starts to notice something is wrong in the first few months of 2023. Even though he loves Lisa very much, he begins to notice small discrepancies in her stories. Once easily brushed aside, doubts and questions now plague him. It became harder to ignore little things like her abrupt detachment in her formerly loving communications, her avoidance of discussing their future plans, and her obvious lack of excitement during their private encounters. Lisa, who is skilled at lying, observes Robert's increasing discomfort. She makes an effort to comfort him by using kind words and loving actions, but the doubt has already begun to grow. The basis of their affair begins to erode under the weight of suspicion, and Robert's vision of the ideal family life with Lisa starts to fall apart. One night, Robert confronts Lisa since he can no longer keep his worries to himself. A secluded area of their preferred hotel suite serves as the environment, which is cozy and comfortable. Tension is high as Robert demands the truth in a quivering voice. His gaze searches hers for any hint of honesty as he asks her directly about the inconsistencies in her stories. Lisa's well-crafted facade starts to crumble. Her typically assured demeanor falters, and she is momentarily speechless. Robert, nevertheless, continues, his desperation evident. He describes the discrepancies he has observed, each of which is a component of the whole that has brought him to this point of conflict. Lisa frantically attempts to restore control as her web of lies starts to fall apart. Robert sees right through her half-truths and justifications. It becomes increasingly clear as she speaks that her charm and cunning are insufficient to soothe him. When there are no more lies to say, Lisa's actual character is revealed. In an effort to ensure their future together, she had been putting pressure on Robert to name his investments and bank accounts in her name. She even proposed that they sell his house and move to a new location together, but she consistently seemed more concerned with the practical than the sentimental. Robert begins to see that her actions were motivated more by protecting his finances than by love. Robert is devastated as the truth is revealed. He realizes that the woman he believed to be his love interest was taking advantage of him for financial gain, which makes him feel both angry and heartbroken. It turns out that the notion of a happy, loving, and ideal future with Lisa is a complete fabrication. Robert must confront the agonizing truth that the woman he loved never genuinely cared for him after the heartbreaking betrayal. He finds it difficult to accept the reality because of the great shock of this discovery. Robert's body is discovered in his opulent home on February 28, 2023. His housekeeper finds his lifeless body and promptly contacts the police. The reason of death initially seems to be a heart attack, which is a terrible but typical occurrence for a man Robert's age and way of life. His neighbors and friends are devastated by the loss of the vivacious businessman. But the first thought of a heart attack is quickly called into question. The coroner does a comprehensive autopsy due to the circumstances surrounding Robert's death. A startling revelation is made while the forensic investigation goes on. Robert was poisoned. What appeared to be a natural death is transformed into a murder case when traces of a deadly chemical are discovered in his system. Community members are shocked by the revelation. To find possible motives and suspects, the police begin a thorough investigation that explores Robert's personal and professional life. His closest friends and family soon come into focus, and Lisa, his covert lover, emerges as a fascinating figure. When Robert's information are revealed, the attention will increase. It turns out that Lisa is the main beneficiary and will receive a sizable share of his wealth and assets. This revelation raises questions and paints Lisa in a negative light, suggesting that she may be a criminal with a definite money motivation. Investigators begin piecing together what happened before Robert passed away, paying particular attention to Lisa's relationship with him, their covert encounters, and her behavior in the final days and weeks of his life. As they look more closely, they find contradictions and warning signs that point to Lisa's possible involvement. They create an unappealing image. It appears that Lisa intended to use all methods necessary to inherit Robert's fortune because she was driven by avarice and a desire for an opulent lifestyle. Lisa had continued to present herself as a loving mother and a loyal wife. But as the investigation progresses, this facade starts to fall apart. Her flawless image was exposed as a falsehood when the police discovered proof of her deception and machinations. She is now viewed with suspicion and mistrust by friends and neighbors who formerly appreciated her grace and elegance. They find it incomprehensible that the woman they seem to be familiar with could be capable of such heartless behavior. The evidence against Lisa grows stronger as new information becomes available. Witnesses come forward with tales of her peculiar remarks and actions. Close examination of financial data reveals discussions and transactions that imply Lisa was scheming to get Robert's money. According to these documents, Lisa convinced Robert to include her name on his will, which sparked suspicion right away. Given that there was no obvious reason for such a close relationship, why would a married lady be named in another man's will? When Mark, Lisa's husband, learns of his wife's affair with Robert and the potential role she played in his demise, he is taken by surprise. He had been so preoccupied with his work that he had failed to see Lisa's double existence. The realization that the lady he believed he knew and loved may have been cheating on him and planning to kill another man for his money hits him hard. Mark struggles to comprehend how his wife could have concealed such a sinister secret from him, leaving him to struggle with feelings of betrayal and incredulity. The evidence against Lisa is indisputable as the investigation goes on. Investigators find emails and texts between Lisa and Robert that show her manipulative side but also depict a passionate affair. Lisa seems to deftly manipulate Robert's feelings in these exchanges, making him feel valued and unique while quietly pressuring him to make financial concessions to her. It becomes evident that love and passion were not the only aspects of Lisa and Robert's relationship. It was a well-thought-out strategy to safeguard her financial future. She made sure she would be the only heir to Robert's money by using her charm and his obsession with her. Once viewed as a romantic diversion from their troubled marriages, the story of their covert affair is now revealed to be a dark conspiracy driven by treachery and ambition. Ultimately, the growing body of information presents a discrediting image of Lisa's character. She is charged with planning Robert's poisoning in order to gain his fortune. In addition to exposing the specifics of her romance, the study also reveals the sinister and perverse motivations that drove her behavior. Everyone who knew her is shocked by the case, and the community must cope with the fallout after learning that one of its own might be capable of such callous manipulation and treachery. The formerly peaceful neighborhood is now the center of controversy and intrigue due to the constant media coverage. Now that she may be charged, Lisa is under careful scrutiny as the inquiry gets closer to exposing the entire scope of her role in Robert's premature death. However, all of this was merely conjecture, and the inquiry had yet to find any hard evidence that would implicate Lisa. Thus, the investigation became more thorough, and this is precisely how it proceeded from the time of Robert's death. We are aware of that. Police find Robert's body in his penthouse on March 6, 2023. The wealthy neighborhood is clouded by the rapid dissemination of news of his unexpected death. When the autopsy indicates that poisoning was the cause of death, the investigation, which had previously focused on natural reasons, takes a sinister turn. Detectives examine Robert Caldwell's wife, Emily Caldwell, 2 days later on March 8, 2023. She offers a convincing alibi by stating that she was out of town on business when he passed away. Emily, who everyone believes has been unaware of her husband's adultery, points the finger at Lisa throughout the interview, implying that her husband had an affair and the reasons behind it. By March 10th, detectives have uncovered Robert and Lisa's private correspondence and bank records, revealing the depth of their covert relationship. The emails and chats show a complicated web of deceit and manipulation planned by Lisa, in addition to an affair. Reports from Toxicology 5 days later verify that Robert's system contains an uncommon toxin. An additional level of premeditation is added to the case when it is discovered via further examination of Lisa's internet activity that she had done a great deal of study on this specific poison. Surveillance footage from a local drugstore shows Lisa buying poison components under a false identity on March 20th. The grainy photos reinforce the mounting suspicion against Lisa by offering a vital connection between her and the tools used to kill Robert. Finally, the police arrive on March 25, 2023. Lisa's facade as the ideal mother and wife is destroyed when she gets arrested at her house. The evidence against her is so strong that she is charged with Robert's murder. When the entire scope of Lisa's deceit and the terrible conclusion of her affair with Robert are revealed, the neighborhood is left in disbelief. The prosecution presents Lisa with overwhelming evidence during the trial. It is revealed that Lisa manipulated Robert by persuading him to alter his will in her favor through the use of emails and texts. As the private and calculating character of her communications is exposed, a clear picture of her objectives is painted, and the courtroom is filled with gasps. Following witness testimony, friends and neighbors testify. They recounted how they often saw Lisa and Robert together, mentioning their intimate bond and making references to the affair. These testimonies offer a more comprehensive framework, supporting the story of Lisa's dishonesty and hidden agenda. Additionally, the prosecution provides money records that establish a direct connection between Lisa and the poison's purchase. She is further linked to the crime by bank records and receipts that show she purchased the materials under false pretenses. The last nail in the coffin is her digital trace, which demonstrates her careful and thorough planning when researching the poison. Lisa's lawyers contend in her defense that Emily set her up in order to exact revenge for her husband's adultery. Emily is shown as a woman who has been spurned and is able to plan a complex plot to incriminate Lisa. Nevertheless, the overwhelming weight of the evidence, which includes witness statements, emails, financial records, and digital traces, against Lisa is indisputable. The prosecution's case is nonetheless compelling in spite of the defense's attempts to raise questions. The jury returns a unanimous decision after considering the huge body of evidence. The truth of Lisa's betrayal and murder of Robert is exposed for everyone to see, and her fate is sealed. Lisa receives a life sentence after being convicted guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict is read and the seriousness of her acts becomes clear, the courtroom falls silent. The community is shocked after being mesmerized by Lisa's idyllic suburban facade. The complex web of deceit and manipulation that ultimately resulted in Robert's death reveals the shadowy side of their ostensibly perfect community. The story turns into a terrifying illustration of how dishonesty and greed may have disastrous results. Once admirers, Lisa's friends and neighbors now struggle with the brutal truth of who she really is. The tale of Robert Caldwell and Lisa Thompson is a sobering reminder of the evil that can lurk beneath a well-maintained facade. The public is enthralled by Lisa Thompson's trial, which exposes the sinister intricacies of a seemingly flawless life. Why would someone go to such lengths? Did justice really get done? These issues continue to be discussed and debated because they are persistent in the public mind. Even though the court case is over, the effects of this gruesome incident are still felt today, serving as a constant reminder of the destructive force of dishonesty and greed. We appreciate you coming along to help us unravel this heartbreaking tale. Remember to click here for another true crime story and subscribe to the channel.
The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Nobody could have predicted the disaster that would soon come to pass in the ensuing silence. Secrets were difficult to keep in the neighborhood, which had traditionally been a quiet place where everyone knew one another. However, a sinister secret that would destroy the appearance of peace and leave a bloody trail in its wake was about to come to light as the winter wind howled outside. Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub, your daily source for gripping true crime documentaries. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an intense and shocking new family betrayal stories only here at True Crime Stories Hub. One by one, the lights in the Carter home went out on the evening of January 27, 2011, leaving the peaceful suburban street in lengthy shadows. The narrative takes place in a neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, where the houses are near to one another and the lawns are immaculate. Every family appears flawless from the outside, every driveway has a shiny automobile, and people wave to one another as they pass. Laura Morgan exemplified excellence. She had everything at age 38, a lovely home, a charming husband, and 2 kids who were exceptional at all they did. She was the type of woman that other ladies admired. She was usually smiling and well-groomed. Richard Morgan, her spouse, was a prosperous corporate attorney who put in a lot of overtime and frequently traveled for work. Laura, who was left to run the home alone, had become used to his absences. She spent her days doing yoga, volunteering for charities, and going out to coffee with other local wives. On the inside, though, Laura was lonely. She started to feel the effects of spending so much time alone in a house that was too large and too silent. She missed the thrill and fire that used to drive her existence. Richard had grown aloof and more preoccupied with his work than their union. With the exception of the one thing she most desired, affection, he gave her everything she could ever ask. Laura first became aware of Emily Carter, the lively and gregarious daughter of their next-door neighbors, when Richard was on one of his frequent business trips. Laura found the energy Emily carried with her, which she brought home from her summer at college, to be intoxicating. Emily was youthful, carefree, and vibrant, much as Laura used to be. Laura started to experience desire, something she hadn't felt in years, as they spent more time together. Emily had her entire life ahead of her at the age of 22. She had come home for the summer to consider her options while attending an upstate college to study art. James and Anna Carter, Emily's parents, had lived next door to the Morgans for as long as Emily could remember, and they had always been close. She had always been treated with kindness by the Morgans, and she looked up to them, particularly Laura, who seemed to have it all worked out. Emily initially viewed Laura as a mentor with whom she could share her concerns, goals, and future with. However, Emily's perception of Laura changed as they spent more time together. Emily felt both excited and alarmed by the way Laura gazed at her, with a hunger in her eyes. Then that happened one evening. A line that could never be uncrossed was crossed by what began as an innocent friendship. Ambition has always been a part of Richard Morgan's personality. He had risen through the ranks of the company, giving his family a comfortable and opulent lifestyle. However, sacrifice accompanied success. His marriage suffered as a result of his job's increasing demands on his time. Laura had changed, and he could sense it by the way she avoided his contact and appeared aloof and preoccupied. However, he persuaded himself that it was only a phase and that they would overcome it. He was unaware of the extent of the situation's demise. Emily was the daughter of James and Anna Carter, who were proud of her. They were ecstatic to have her home for the summer because she had always been the source of their happiness. They never questioned the time she spent with Laura and had complete faith in her. After all, they had known and respected Laura for years, and she was their friend. However, as the weeks went by, Anna started to see minor adjustments in Emily. She appeared agitated and preoccupied. Unaware of the true nature of Emily's relationship with Laura, Anna blamed it on the demands of college life. Laura Morgan saw Emily Carter for the first time on a sunny spring day. Everyone appeared to be outside taking in the sun as the neighborhood came alive with the warmth of the season. Laura saw Emily while taking her daily afternoon stroll. She was reading a book while seated on the stairs of her parents' home. Since Laura had last seen Emily, Emily had matured greatly. She was no longer the little girl who rode her bike around the neighborhood. She was now a young lady, self-assured, attractive, and able to light up the entire street with her grin. Emily looked up and met Laura's eyes as she waved as she went by. Talking on how nice it had been to see the sun again and how the winter had been, they exchanged a few courteous comments. However, there was more to their discourse, a spark of connection that ignited between them. Laura accepted Emily's invitation to sit with her on the stairs, and they conversed for what seemed like hours. Laura told tales about her life, her family, and her hardships, and Emily talked about her college years, her aspirations, and her worries. Laura was amazed by the ease with which they interacted. It had been a while since she had experienced such a connection. Laura and Emily discovered more and more excuses to hang out together as the days went by. They would sit in the backyard with a glass of wine, go for long walks, or meet at the local park. They became closer with each encounter, and the casual discussions quickly evolved into something more profound. Neither of them could deny the tension that existed between them. Being around Emily made Laura feel alive, something she hadn't felt in years. Emily, however, was attracted to Laura's self-assurance and maturity. Laura possessed all the qualities Emily valued: elegance, knowledge, and a sense of mystery. They ended up back at Laura's place one evening after an especially lengthy walk. The night air was cold, and the sun had gone down. Unspoken words filled the silence between them as they sat on the porch. Before Laura could react, Emily turned to her and leaned in to give her a kiss. Laura's mind raced for a second, but then she kissed Emily back, feeling the rush of the forbidden. Their rendezvous were clandestine after that night, including whispered words and stolen moments. Even though they were aware that what they were doing was wrong, it was nonetheless thrilling. The excitement of it all, the danger, the secret, and the passion she had long missed enthralled Laura. The intensity of their affection engulfed Emily as well. Enticed by the novel world Laura had introduced her to, they concealed their affair, taking care to prevent anyone from figuring out what was going on. Before meeting Emily, Laura would drop her kids off at school and wait for Richard to depart for work. They shared their stolen moments together, far away from prying eyes. Every kiss, touch, and look was risky, but that just added to the excitement. These times spent with Emily were like a narcotic to Laura. The thrill of being wanted, of escaping the confines of her ideal existence, was too much for her to handle. As a result, the romance went on, getting deeper every day and guiding them both in a direction they could never go back to. Things had begun to shift by the summer of 2010. Richard Morgan, who had always been so preoccupied with his work, started to observe the minor changes in his wife's conduct. He had married a different Laura. Her formerly friendly and inviting grin appeared forced, and she was aloof and preoccupied. She was out of the house more often, usually with evasive excuses about running errands or seeing friends. At first, Richard attempted to ignore it, attributing the widening distance between them to his own rigorous work. However, a persistent suspicion began to grow. Richard discovered Laura sitting by herself in the dimly lit living room one evening after returning from an extended business trip. Her eyes were far away, as if she were deep in contemplation. She dismissed his question about what was wrong, saying she was simply exhausted. Richard, however, was wiser. The tension and uneasiness that had developed between them were palpable to him. There was a problem, but he was unable to identify it. In the meantime, Laura and Emily's covert affair persisted, but it was no longer the exciting diversion it had been. A creeping sense of dread had taken the place of the excitement that had once driven their enthusiasm. After being so engrossed in Laura, Emily started to realize how serious what they were doing was. She was plagued by guilt, particularly when she looked at her parents, who had entire faith in Laura. The excitement of the forbidden was evaporating, and she recognized that what they were doing was wrong. One hot July afternoon was the tipping point. Emily ended the affair because she could no longer live with the guilt. She realized she needed to cease the restless nights she had spent struggling with her conscience. She made plans to meet Laura in their favorite location, a quiet area of the local park, away from prying eyes. Emily was obviously nervous when she got there. She was having trouble finding the perfect words, and her hands were shaking. Laura knew right away that something wasn't right. Emily avoided making eye contact, and a chilly resolve took the place of her customary warmth. Emily ultimately expressed that she could no longer sustain their connection after a tense quiet. Citing the immorality of their behavior, she stated that it had to halt. Laura reacted desperately as she felt a growing panic. She started to feel overwhelmed by the idea of losing Emily, something she had feared. She extended her arm and took Emily's hand in a firm, entreating hold, showing that she was unwilling to release it. Laura was clearly afraid of going back to the loneliness and emptiness she had known before Emily entered her life. Even though Laura was desperate, Emily persisted in her resolve, knowing that stopping the affair was the proper thing to do, despite the internal conflict it caused. She made an effort to distance herself by highlighting how their connection was hurting them both. But because she felt compelled to keep what they had, Laura wouldn't let go. Laura adopted a menacing posture in a last-ditch effort to stop Emily from leaving. She threatened to tell everyone, including Emily's parents and Laura's husband Richard, about their relationship if Emily left. This stern ultimatum, which would leave Emily with nothing, highlighted Laura's desperate attempt to keep the person who had grown essential to her. The menace hung heavily between them, and Emily froze. Laura wasn't bluffing, she knew that. She hesitated because she was afraid of losing everything she valued and of the truth being revealed. It rocked her to her core when she saw the desperation and dread of abandonment in Laura's eyes. Emily became aware of her situation. She could feel the walls closing in on her as Laura's words replayed in her head. The balance of power had changed, but Emily reluctantly consented to carry on the romance. Once based on reciprocal desire, the relationship had devolved into a power struggle, with Laura now in the lead. The fire and love that once blazed so brightly between them had been corrupted by control, remorse, and dread. This signaled the start of the end, as the affair descended more into darkness and drew them both closer to a terrible finish. Emily Carter had reached a breaking point by early 2011. Once an exciting diversion, the romance with Laura had become into a continual cause of anxiety and worry. For the sake of her future and sanity, Emily understood she had to end it. Laura no longer felt alive, but she had begun dating a new man from her college who gave her a sense of purpose. She felt secure, normal, and free of the weight of secret that had held her down for so long when she was with him. Emily distanced herself from Laura as she became more involved in this new romance. She avoided seeing Laura altogether and stopped returning her calls and texts. Emily's choice was irrevocable. She had to leave Laura's poisonous hold on her and move on with her life. But Laura's fascination increased as Emily grew more distant. Laura noticed Emily's transformation right away. The indicators were obvious. Emily's abrupt lack of availability, her coldness, and the way she talked less and less about their future together. Laura started to become paranoid. The idea of losing Emily was intolerable, and she could feel her sliding through her fingers. Laura had used Emily as her secret, her thrill, and her escape. Laura was afraid that without her, she would revert to her previous life, which was drab and uninteresting. Laura grew increasingly desperate as Emily withdrew. She began unexpectedly visiting Emily's home in an attempt to see her and rekindle that bond. When that failed, she would check for evidence of her betrayal by driving past Emily's college in the hopes of seeing her with that new man. Laura was driven to the verge of insanity by her obsession with Emily and her dread of losing control over her. The tension between Laura and Emily peaked on that chilly January 26th day. Emily was left alone at home when her parents, James and Anna Carter, left for the day. Laura was aware of this and viewed it as her final opportunity to speak with Emily. The idea of Emily moving on without her and being replaced by someone else was too much for her to bear any longer. Laura was thinking about what she would say and how she would persuade Emily to stay with her as she drove to the Carters' house. Tension was high in the air as Laura arrived. Laura's unexpected arrival startled Emily, and the discussion soon became heated. In a frantic, intense attempt to figure out why Emily was abandoning her, Laura demanded answers. Firm in her resolve, Emily made it apparent that their affair was finished in an attempt to put a definitive end to it. Laura, however, was unable to accept it. Her fury escalated into rage, and her despair into anger. The altercation became unmanageable. Laura was so overcome by her feelings that she was unable to control them. She lunged at Emily in a fit of unrestrained rage. It was a short but fierce battle. In a blind fury, Laura put her hands around Emily's neck and squeezed as hard as she could. Emily made an effort to resist, but Laura's hold was too firm and unyielding. Emily's body went limp in a matter of moments, and her eyes lost their vitality. Laura was in disbelief as the truth of what she had done started to set in. She could not understand the horror of what she had done, so she stood there, shaking, looking at Emily's dead body. Immediately, panic struck. Laura was aware that she needed to hide her identity and make it appear as though it wasn't what it was. A heartless murder. She hurriedly cleared the premises of any evidence of her presence, making it appear as though a heist had gone awry. She left Emily's body behind in the hopes that it would distract the police, stole a few belongings, and ran away. The following day, the sound of Anna Carter's cries rocked the peaceful neighborhood. When she got home, she discovered her daughter's motionless and cold body on the floor of the living room. There was chaos in the scene. The room was littered with broken glass, overturned furniture, and emptied drawers. But Anna didn't notice any of that. Her beloved daughter Emily was lying there motionless, and that was all she could see. Anna called the police right away, her voice trembling with panic. It was immediately apparent to the initial responding officers that they were facing more than a straightforward heist. The scene's violence and the obvious evidence of a struggle suggested something much darker. In order to piece together the circumstances leading up to this fatal moment, detectives searched the residence for clues as the inquiry got underway. Detective Haley Miles, a seasoned investigator renowned for her sharp intuition and unwavering quest for the truth, was given the case 2 months after Emily's passing. Detective Miles recognized there was more to the story than a straightforward burglary gone awry as soon as she entered the investigation. Despite the chaos at the crime scene, several aspects didn't line together. The ransacking seeming spontaneity felt contrived, too planned in its sloppy manner. She had years of experience and was able to spot the tiny clues that frequently indicated a more sinister motivation. Examining the original reports again and carefully going through the material gathered at the scene, Detective Miles started her inquiry. At first, the hypothesis of a failed break-in was the main focus, but as she examined more data, her suspicions increased. The way the scene had been damaged was inconsistent, and Emily's murder seemed to indicate something far more intimate than a simple heist. As a murderous technique, strangulation was personal and motivated by intense feelings of rage, passion, and despair. Miles could see that Emily's death was not a senseless act of violence. Detective Miles started interviewing everyone who had interacted with Emily in the days preceding her death as part of her inquiry. One of the people called in for interrogation was Laura Morgan, a neighbor and close family friend. Laura expressed her shock and grief over Emily's untimely death while posing as the worried and encouraging neighbor. She seemed helpful, responding to all of the detective's inquiries and even providing more details when asked. But Detective Miles had been taught to look beyond words. Laura's hand shook a little during the interview, and she noticed small cues that made her uncomfortable, as well as times when she appeared to pause before responding. Although her responses were mostly consistent, Miles couldn't help but notice a few minor discrepancies, and her eyes would dart to the side when specific queries were posed. Although these findings weren't sufficient to make a direct accusation against Laura, they did raise some questions in the detective's mind. There was a problem. In an effort to learn more about Emily's last days, Detective Miles asked to view her phone records as part of her ongoing inquiry. Unexpectedly, the data showed a large volume of phone conversations and text messages between Emily and Laura in the months before her passing. These messages were out of the ordinary for a neighborly connection in terms of both timing and frequency. Although not directly incriminating, the communications suggested a closeness that didn't seem appropriate. This finding changed the investigation's focus. A much more personal goal was now being pursued by what had begun as a search for a random burglar. Detective Miles started looking into the idea that Emily and Laura had a deeper relationship than first appeared. The investigation's main focus was their relationship, which sparked inquiries regarding Laura's role in Emily's life and maybe her demise. The phone logs offered a fresh insight into Laura's possible intentions by implying that their relationship had been intense, if not problematic. Laura became much more prominent as a figure of interest after this disclosure, which further complicated the case. The forensic examination of the evidence gathered from the crime scene was finished as the inquiry went on. One particular finding, a minor but important one, jumped out. The material from a Lauren garment matched the fibers discovered on Emily's body. Despite being circumstantial, the evidence was an important component of the puzzle. Although the fibers alone did not establish guilt, they did establish a connection between Laura and the incident that made it difficult to ignore. Detective Miles increased her attention on Laura because she was aware that this discovery might hold the secret to the truth. A more complete examination of Laura's alibi and her activities on the day of the murder was made possible by this additional piece of evidence. In an effort to uncover new links between Laura and the crime, Miles started re-interviewing witnesses and obtaining more forensic evidence. With every new piece of evidence, the case was gradually coming together and encircling Laura. Even though the fibers were only one piece, when paired with the phone logs and Laura's dubious actions, they created a picture that was getting harder to deny. When a local teen came forward with a shocking piece of information on May 25th, the inquiry took yet another important turn. The witness stated that on the afternoon of Emily's death, she saw Laura leaving the Carter home. Although the teenager's testimony was initially unconfirmed, this sighting put Laura at the scene of the incident, which was consistent with the mounting evidence that Laura was involved. Detective Miles used a methodical approach to the witness, verifying the veracity of their story by comparing it with additional evidence. There was no apparent reason for the witness to lie, and their account was consistent. The case against Laura was significantly enhanced by this additional testimony. An eyewitness statement, phone records, and forensic evidence were combined to create a convincing story that implied Laura had been there as Emily was dying. Detective Miles understood that Laura would eventually have enough to make an arrest since the walls were closing in on her. Detective Haley Miles sought and secured a search warrant for the Morgan residence in light of the growing evidence against Laura Morgan. The crew carried out a thorough search, looking in every area of the property for any evidence linking Laura to Emily Carter's murder. An important piece of evidence surfaced throughout the hunt. A piece of Emily's necklace, hidden among Laura's possessions. It was a damning revelation. Emily's parents attested to the fact that the necklace was a unique item that Emily had worn often. Its discovery in Laura's possession prompted suspicions right away, and it was unlikely that it was a coincidence. Detective Miles needed this discovery to complete his puzzle. In a manner that was difficult to express, the necklace connected Laura and Emily intimately. Laura was taken into custody on suspicion of murder right away. The stunning announcement sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, shattering the perception of Laura as a loving mother and wife. Everyone concerned started to realize how serious the situation was as Laura was placed under arrest. There was more to this arrest than just a crime. It was about trust being destroyed, betrayal, and hidden lives. Laura Morgan was officially charged with first-degree murder following weeks of investigation and evidence collection. Given the alleged premeditation of the offense, the prosecution deemed the charge to be serious. But Laura insisted she was innocent and had nothing to do with Emily's passing. She said she had just neglected to give the jewelry back to the Carters after discovering it while out for a walk in the area. However, neither the public nor the authorities were significantly influenced by this reasoning. Her account was improbable at best, and the evidence was stacked against her. Both locally and internationally, the case garnered a lot of attention. The notion that a suburban housewife might be complicit in such a heinous act both fascinated and appalled people. On the day Laura was charged, the courtroom was crowded with media and bystanders who wanted to see the woman who had transformed from an exemplary citizen to a suspected killer. There was a lot of excitement before Laura Morgan's trial started. With the help of a skilled and tenacious team, the prosecution made a strong case that vividly described the events leading up to Emily's death. They emphasized Laura and Emily's affair, highlighting Laura's increasingly possessive and obsessive behavior in the weeks leading up to the murder. The timeline presented by the prosecution demonstrated how Laura's fear of losing control over Emily and her jealousy had led her to do the unimaginable. A key component of the prosecution's case was forensic evidence. Laura's culpability was demonstrated by the fibers discovered on Emily's body, the phone logs, and the eyewitness accounts. The last nail in the coffin was the jewelry that was found in Laura's possession. In order to further illustrate Laura's pathological attachment, the prosecution contended that she had preserved it as a perverted souvenir of her relationship with Emily. The defense found it difficult to refute the overwhelming evidence as the trial progressed. Laura's denials of guilt appeared more and more flimsy in light of the prosecution's thorough and incriminating evidence. Every fresh piece of evidence strengthened the prosecution's case during the heated trial. The jury, which was composed of regular people, listened carefully, their expressions becoming more solemn as the case went on. The jury returned a unanimous decision following weeks of testimony, evidence presentation, and tearful courtroom moments. Laura Morgan was convicted of murder in the first degree. As the decision's weight descended upon the courtroom, the verdict was given with a sense of finality. As the sentence was read, Laura's face stayed stern. Life in prison with no chance of release. Given the seriousness of her offense, the sentencing guaranteed her a life sentence in prison. Many people found closure with the verdict, especially Emily's family, who had suffered for months after her passing. But it also left a community to deal with the fallout. Laura's years of maintaining a flawless facade had now been irrevocably destroyed. Once peaceful and tight-knit, the neighborhood was left in chaos as locals struggled to comprehend that someone they believed to be familiar could be capable of such violence. The neighborhood was still in shock in the days after the decision. The Morgans had exemplified suburban prosperity. Richard, the successful lawyer, and Laura, the ideal housewife. That image was now permanently damaged. Unable to handle the gravity of what had transpired, Richard Morgan filed for divorce and left the area. He was unable to handle the pressure of the trial, the attention from the public, and the betrayal by the woman he believed to be his acquaintance. The Morgan family, as the neighborhood had known them, ended with his departure. The neighborhood was left to pick up the slack. People started talking about the case a lot and making assumptions about what could have pushed Laura to such extremes. Some said it was just an example of someone losing control, while others suggested it was the burden of keeping up her ideal life. Whatever the cause, the case turned into a warning, a reminder that no one's life is as ideal as it appears. One could only speculate about the intricacies Detective Haley Miles had uncovered as the case faded from the news. Dark truths hidden beneath the surface of suburban life were revealed by what started out as a regular investigation into a robbery. Was it possible to prevent Laura Morgan's spiral into madness? Or did her infatuation with Emily make it inevitable? It is possible that Emily would still be alive if Laura had taken a different route. Was there ever a moment when things may have gone differently? Or was this catastrophe predetermined to occur? Laura's story serves as a reminder that there may be evil lurking behind every closed door. We now have to ask ourselves, what other secrets are still hidden in the quiet neighborhoods around us, as Laura serves her life sentence? To ensure you don't miss any of our true crime stories, kindly subscribe to our channel. There are several stories of regular lives devolving into pandemonium. Tales where secrecy and obsession lead to the ultimate demise. Check them out, please.